This presentation introduces you to Disney's 12 basic principles of animation, which are the heart and soul of all successful animation. The 12 basic principles of animation was introduced by Disney animators Ollie Johnson and Frank Thomas in their 1981 book, The Illusion of Life Disney Animation. The purpose of the principles is to produce an illusion of characters adhering to the basic laws of physics. And they also dealt with more abstract issues, such as emotional timing and character appeal. Their book and its principles have been referred to as the Bible of the industry. Though originally intended to apply to traditional hand-drawn animation, principles still have great relevance for today's more prevalent computer animation. Here is the list of the 12 principles: squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead action and pose to pose, follow through and overlap action, slow in and slow out, arcs, secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. Now we'll go through each one with a brief definition, starting with squash and stretch. The purpose of squash and stretch is to give a sense of weight and flexibility to the drawn objects. It can be applied to simple objects, like a bouncing ball, or more complex constructions like the human face. Taken to an extreme, a figure stretched or squashed to an exaggerated degree can have a very comical effect. Anticipation is used to prepare the audience for an action, and to make the action appear more realistic. A dancer jumping off the floor has to bend his knees first. A golfer making a swing has to swing the club back first. This is anticipation. The purpose of staging is to direct the audience's attention to make it clear what is of greatest importance in the scene, such as what is happening and what is about to happen. This includes an action, a personality, or an expression or a mood. Straight ahead action and pose to pose are two very different approaches to the actual animation process. Straight ahead action means drawing out a scene frame by frame from beginning to end, while pose to pose involves starting with drawing a few keyframes, then filling in the intervals later. Straight ahead action creates more fluid, dynamic illusion of movement, and is better for producing realistic sequences. However, it is hard to maintain proportions and to create convincing poses. Pose to pose works better for dramatic or emotional scenes. A combination of the two techniques is often used. Follow through and overlapping action are closely related techniques that help render movement more realistic and give the impression that characters follow the laws of physics. Follow through means that separate parts of a body will continue moving after the character has stopped. Overlapping action is the tendency for parts of the body to move at different rates. The movement of the human body and most other objects needs time to accelerate and slow down. For this reason, an animation looks more realistic if it has more frames near the beginning and the end of a movement and fewer in the middle. This is called slow in and slow out. Most human and animal actions occur along an arc trajectory, and animation should reproduce these movements for greater realism. This can apply to a human limb moving by rotating a joint, or a thrown object moving along a curved trajectory. The exception is mechanical movement, which typically moves in straight lines. Adding secondary actions to the main action gives a scene more life and can help to support the main action. A person walking can simultaneously swing his arms or keep them in his pockets. He can speak or whistle, or he can express emotions through facial expressions. Secondary actions emphasize rather than take attention away from the main action. Timing refers to the number of drawings or frames for a given action, which translates to the speed of the action on the film. On a purely physical level, correct timing makes objects appear to abide by the laws of physics. For instance, an object's weight decides how it will react. Timing is also critical for establishing a character's mood, emotion, and reaction. Exaggeration is in effect especially useful for animation. This is because the perfect imitation of reality can look static and dull in cartoons. The level of exaggeration depends on whether you seek realism, like Disney, or a particular style, like a Tex Avery very exaggerated take, where the character actually comes apart. The principle of solid drawing means taking into account forms in three-dimensional space, giving them volume and weight. Appeal in a cartoon character corresponds to what would be called charisma in an actor. A character who is appealing is not necessarily sympathetic. Villains or monsters can also be appealing. The important thing is that the viewer feels the character is real and interesting. Now you know the secret of good animation, and it's all thanks to Frank and Ollie for putting together the list. Now in this first of 3 animation classes, we'll dive into implementing several of the key principles you've just read about.